I'm Rachel Dein. I'm an artist that largely works with plants. I love casting, so a lot of my work is to do with casting plants. And I was invited to come and work at Nunnington Hall, casting the plants, making a record like a portrait painter of a year at Nunnington Hall.
We are an organic garden, and my aim is to try and interact with people and engage with people and tell them our philosophy behind gardening, and to talk about how valuable our gardens are to help the wildlife. So having things like the meadows and the orchards, which will help capture carbon, help reduce the impact that we all have on the environment. We are in a difficult situation in the world we live in at the moment, where nature isn't working as well as it should do, and our gardens can do a lot better for nature. Here at Nunnington, we're not just planting plants just for show. Of course, we want everything to look good. How we present the garden is very important to our visitors, and we want to give our visitors the best experience they can. But at the same time, we want to help the environment and we want to help wildlife. So we're always looking at the benefits. Is that going to provide seasonal colour and interest for the visitors? Is that going to create berries for the wildlife? Is that going to be a larval food plant for a particular butterfly? Is that going to be the host for a particular bug or beetle? So we're looking at it from different perspectives to try and make the garden work, not only for us, for our visitors, but also for the nature, for the wildlife and for the environment as well. So here we are in the meadows, Rachel, and to me the meadows represent the seasonality of nature more than anywhere else in the garden. It's constantly evolving. It's a rich, diverse tapestry of plant life and insect life. Our native plants are the most useful for nature because our insects have evolved with our native plants, and our native plants are often free. They're the ones that some people call weeds, but they're absolutely cherished by us in the garden. They help us to fill in the gaps in the garden. They help to create uniformity and create repetition throughout the borders, and they're free, so it's win-win. And we view them all as wildflowers, so the beauty of that is that when people ask us, how do you control the weeds in the garden? We can quite confidently say to them, well, we don't have any weeds in the garden. Yes, of course, we have some wildflowers, and many of them grow in the wrong place, and so we may have to move some of them sometimes, but none of them are weeds to us. They're all wildflowers, and that's a simple way for anybody at home. It's a great message that we can get across to people. If they want to eliminate all the weeds from the garden in one go, then all they have to do is consider them as wildflowers, and hey presto, they've got a garden full of wildflowers and not a single weed in their garden.
I've learnt a lot from Nick, I think, in the process. What I really like about Nunnington is the wild areas and the more formal areas. I think they contrast really nicely with each other. It's sort of perfect. I mean, I think everything is about contrast: light, dark, death, life. But I think that's one of the discussions and one of the nice things about Nunnington. There are some really wild areas, but it's also kept very trim. It's got a neat structure and those sort of flat, long borders. I think they work together very well. And I think perhaps that's me too in my work. You know, I have the very flat, simple areas, but, you know, quite a mess going on out of it. Chaos. Out of chaos, there's some order. But it's contrast, I think. Your eye sort of can appreciate something when you've got something to contrast it with.
Because the planting in the garden is so ephemeral and it comes and goes so quickly, the beauty of this exhibition is Rachel's art. We'll be able to capture those moments, capture them literally in stone or in clay, so we can engage with a different audience that may not necessarily come to see the plants in the garden, but then when they see them as Rachel's artwork, then hopefully they will see this deeper story behind the plants that we chose, the plants that I chose as the gardener in the garden, and the way that Rachel chose to present them in her work. It will help people read between between the lines, and hopefully get a better love for gardens and for plants and for the nature and wildlife that these gardens are host to. It's making me look at the plants in a different way. I've known a lot of these plants for the whole of my lifetime, but the way she presents them is different to how I've perceived them. So it's a real great synergy between mine and Rachel's work. With increased populations and more need for more housing and for more need for food production, then our gardens are becoming even more of a valuable space to create that habitat for wildlife and for diversity, not only for our own well-being, for spaces that we want to go and enjoy nature, but also for the wildlife, for the insects and the birds. So whether it's a shared garden like the National Trust Gardens and people are encouraged to come here and see the beauty, or whether you've got a very small backyard or even a balcony, then anything we can do to provide extra habitat for wildlife and create corridors so they can get from one habitat to another. All our gardens are becoming even more and more important for wildlife.
The reason I started working with plants, which was before casting now, at college my degree show involved carving vegetables, so I was working with plant material then, and I had a bad time to some extent at college, and I was reaching out for how to get my head around it. I drew on an experience I had as an 8-year-old. I didn't think much of it at the time, but basically I'd thrown melon seeds down my parents' bathroom sink. I was making a necklace, and then a few weeks later they grew up through the overflow. So when I was at college at that point, that was a very good sort of life-enforcing, positive sort of thing that I hung on to, and I tried to recapture that. I think the comfort for me was in the power of nature, and despite death, the circular thing of life, and what I'm doing by preserving the pieces from Nunnington is they'll die and they'll go, but they're preserved there in plaster to be appreciated.